Welcome in. Welcome to the Hoof Podcast live on Tuesday night, post NFL draft. What a great time the NFL draft turned out to be. Thanks for tuning in with us on Cover One. Hope you guys tuned in over the weekend on the great NFL draft coverage by Cover One. My man Anthony was definitely part of the team. I think everyone did a great job for that, especially the guys out in Vegas, giving their live reaction. Greg, Eric, and Aaron. So
yeah, it was an awesome weekend. Doing the coverage live all 3 days was fun as well. Getting to interact with everybody, all the fans of Cover One tuning in. At times we were up over 850 viewers live. It made it very exciting and fun to go through, and it's just fun to kind of share your live reaction. I mean, I'm on the camera when I see the Bills pick, and you could see my reaction as well as the other guys who were on, and it was a fun thing to be a part of, both the excitement, kind of confusion at times, disappointment, and we're going to get to all of it tonight as we go through what we really think of all these picks.
Yeah, so I'm guessing your wife's not into the draft.
Not at all.
Or any family members or friends.
Yeah.
I mean, you were dialed in all weekend, all 3 days. You were dialed in.
That's right. Yeah. So it was kind of my thing. I'm like, okay, at this time, I spent time with my son during the day, so that I said, all right, 7:00, I'm done. Saturday morning, Kathy and I did something Saturday afternoon, so I was only part of it halfway on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it was like 2013 when the draft was just starting to be on TV and like be an event, right?
Yeah.
At least it seems that way.
Yeah,
I would host a party, right? And I would, get the pizza, get the wings, got the beers ready, invite the boys over, and nobody showed up ever. This is what started my wife and I's tradition of traveling together every year. Is I would host parties and literally no one would show up because they don't think the draft is an event yet. So just to see that it's grown, this much is, we were kind of ahead of the curve on that.
Right. And now you get to go somewhere and have fun and watch the draft together.
Exactly. So. Now it turned into a great tradition. So you'll never see me on live draft coverage because my wife won't let me.
Yeah, you guys have every year.
Speaking of ahead of the curve, I did see Mel Kaiir, 39 years. Been hosting
wow
39 years. That's
incredible.
Way ahead of his time on that.
I mean, talk about having the coolest job ever, though. I mean, that's what he does. He evaluates college players all year long and leads up to the draft, right? And then that's the number one guy everybody thinks of or talks about, right? Where's Mel
the
Kaiir
Godfather, right?
Yeah,
I definitely agree. I still enjoy Mel for sure. Anyway, let's get into it. Welcome to Tuesday, post NFL draft. Let's jump right off here. DeAndre Hopkins suspended 6 games for PEDs.
Yeah, big news today around the NFL with the Hopkins suspension. 6 games. I guess he still gets to go through preseason and all of that, but once the season starts, 6 games suspended without pay for violating the PED substance abuse. And it's an unfortunate thing. He's one of the stars of the game, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, hands down. We all know that. And the fact that he got caught using something he wasn't supposed to is not great. And, I read the story today. And just like most athletes, he's deny. Oh, I didn't know what I was taking, or I have no idea how this became positive, and I want to get to the bottom of it. And I'm just sick of the bullshit. Like, why do you have to lie? Do you think we're stupid at this point? You failed the PED test. There's been rumors all forever about how when you're getting tested, right? It's not completely random.
Right.
And he tested positive for a diuretic in his system, trying to dilute out the PEDs that they found, the ultimate substance he was banned for. So not only was he taking the banned substance, he was taking a diuretic to try and clean his system out so that he didn't test positive for the banned substance. And yet he doesn't know what he's putting in his system. That's a bunch of bullshit. Like, why lie? Yeah. Just admit I was taking something I shouldn't have. I should have been more aware of the rules. I'm sorry I'm doing this to my team, and I'll move forward as a better person and a better aware of the rules, being more aware of what I'm putting in my body.
Yeah,
because his athletic people around him, your trainer, whoever you're trusting to make those decisions for you, what you eat, what you take in, what kind of supplements. You've gone over this with them. They know what they're putting in their bodies. And
I think you hire a crew to kind of show you.
Exactly.
Right? Hey, take this, not this.
You have to trust them.
But I think it's incredibly complex. they test for so many different PEDs. And I think at the highest level, which Hopkins certainly is at, they're always trying to find a leg up against competition, right? An easier way because it's so demanding. You're talking 16 to 18-hour days in the gym, right? So
Yeah.
just to get ahead a little bit, I mean, I think you kind of you push the boundaries a little bit and say, hey, well, this one's not on the list. Maybe I could take this enhancement and it's not being tested, so maybe I could get by on this one. Like, because this happens frequently. So, like, what else is the explanation? I mean, I just think that world is insanely complex. And I can't imagine being at the highest level and someone's always after you, right? You're trying to knock you off the hill.
Yeah. Well, and you also, I mean, it's very um clear what substances they don't want you to take, right? And these experts who are deciding these supplements that the players take and how to get that advantage in the right way know exactly what they're not supposed to put in there and what these supplements contain. And again, the fact that he had a diuretic trying to dilute it out of his system or get rid of it from his system tells you that they definitely knew
Somebody
he was
screwed
going to
up
test positive.
somewhere.
And
Maybe it
again,
was him.
the
Maybe it was
rumors
a
are they
guy.
tell you so
Maybe
that
it's a
you
doctor.
know, oh, make sure you're clean when you're going to get tested. And the fact that he wasn't and he tested,
Yeah.
he deserves the suspension, but take it like a man. Don't be you make yourself look like a joke. He lost my respect, right? He's one of the best players in the league, and I will always look at him as a joke now. You're a joke. Don't lie to my face and act like I'm stupid because you tried to take an advantage and you knew you were doing something wrong. I have more respect for guys who say, I did do that, and I'm sorry I passed. I know I shouldn't have, but it's a competitive league, and I should have been more aware, and I will from now on. And I'm sorry I hurt my team.
Now, I feel
This
like,
maybe the Cardinals knew about this before the draft, which is
right.
why they ended up making the trade
Well,
that they
that's what I was
did
kind
for
of getting
another
at is
number
why
one
is it
receiver.
6 games? I mean, some people get 4. I think Julian Edelman had 4-game suspension, right? Why 6?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the type of PED that he tested positive for. There wasn't much in terms of the at least not this morning, the article that I read. It just said that it was 6 games and that he had a diuretic as well.
Is it severity?
Maybe that's why. Maybe it was the compounding the fact that he not only tested positive, but that he was also trying to hide it. So they took a 6-game suspension because you can get in trouble for just having the type of diuretic that's trying to like clean
Right.
out your system.
There's
If you test
probably
positive
different
for that.
levels. Like if you take a steroid, right, it might be a higher suspension, or it's probably a record if you have a previous history. I'm
Right,
sure that
right.
plays a factor
Or
as
you
well.
get a
But
warning for something. Yeah.
anyway, Reptile, what's going on? Says hi, Hoofers.
What's going
Good to
on?
see you, buddy. Anthony got a question. Ellis share.
Yeah.
If J.D. McKissick didn't back out of his deal and the Bills didn't draft Cook, who do you think the second round pick
Ooh,
would have been? Ooh.
that
Hypotheticals already. A couple days out of the draft.
big
Hypotheticals.
mystery there. I would say the one piece we didn't get, I was pounding the table for Parham in the second round. He went in the third round, the pick after we picked. So I probably would say insert your favorite offensive lineman, offensive guard.
Yeah.
That's what I would have wanted, at least
Chad
if I was the
Muma.
GM. What the Bills were looking at, well, now we know. Maybe they would have considered going linebacker since that's where they went in the third round. Would they have pulled the trigger on a Nakobe Dean at that point instead of where he went in the third? Maybe not.
Possible they
Who
trade
knows?
back.
Exactly. They might have traded back
About that a
again.
few times.
Right. They did that twice to get the Cook trade pick that they made, but maybe they would have tried to get down even further to make multiple third round picks.
Eric McNeil says PEDs are 6 games, recreational drugs are 4 games.
That's why.
That makes
That's why.
sense. So it's pretty standard. Makes sense to me.
And he had originally appealed it, but he dropped the appeal, knowing that he wasn't going to win the appeal, basically. And then said, "I have no idea how this happened to me, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it, and I'll give
wasn't me."
more out when it." Yeah, exactly. Bull crap. Just admit it. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Well, I mean, every time I've been caught by the police, I say it wasn't me. So I understand.
I didn't do it.
It was him. It wasn't me. It's the damn doctor.
I wasn't
hired.
speeding.
Yeah. Anyway, takeaways from round 1. Pretty crazy draft year. Lots of movement.
Ooh, it was fun.
This year, the actual players traded during the draft. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just no way you can predict some of these moves. And unlike other years, quarterbacks really kind of thin, right? Not a big story this year.
One
with the
in the
quarterbacks,
first
so,
round. That's it. Yeah. None in the second round, right?
What else we got for takeaways? Round 1. What's your takeaway?
So many trades. The player trades were the biggest shockers, right? I mean, 2 elite wide receivers in Brown and what's his name from Baltimore?
Brown and Brown.
Brown and Brown, yeah. Both
Marquise.
Browns, Marquise Brown and AJ
Something
Brown.
against Browns,
Wow. I mean, we were genuinely shocked on the show when that came through. Like, wow, AJ Brown gets traded from Tennessee. What are they doing in Tennessee? Like, clearly they're going to be receiver needy, and that really turned the tables of the draft. I think Tennessee was one of the losers of the draft, if you will. Baltimore managed to turn it around. I really like the haul they got. With their tight ends, especially because that fits their offense. It fits the mold of what they're
Baltimore's
trying to do
good
there.
at drafting. We talk about this
and they
every
had
year.
just so many good players. I really did like Baltimore's draft. One of the best teams drafted, or at least their haul this year, I'd say overall. But that was probably the most fun. And then all of the trades that happened in between, and it happened very quickly, right? The pick was in, okay, traded, pick was in, to the point where ESPN was like stalling because the pick was in, and they were like, yeah, we got to get so many commercials in, right? And we got to go so late or whatever due to contractual obligations. And
throw the stray jacket guy in there, right? Distract the crowd, slow it down.
But it was fun to watch and be a part of and see it all go down. And even when the Bills picked, right, we traded up. We were one of those teams that traded up 2 spots to make our
very
pick.
Interesting. Why trade up 2 spots? Brandon Beane was very straightforward. Elam was the last guy with a first-round grade. You got to make sure you get a first-round grade in the first round. It all matters. So I think that was a good move there from what you described. Other takeaways, Georgia's defense was really good.
Ooh, yeah.
Very good.
They have at least 3.
5 defenders taken.
5? Oh, man, I'm way off. Yeah.
Just defenders, most for a school in the common draft era.
That is crazy.
Even beating Alabama, which is surprising for me. Other things, there's a common draft era record, 9 teams with multiple selections.
That was another thing I was going to comment on. Yeah. It was fun to watch too, because especially at the top of the draft with the Giants and the Jets having 2 top 10 picks. I mean, it was just rapid fire. Wow. These teams just got a lot better that quickly because, they drafted 2 of the top guys in this draft, presumably. Obviously, you have to wait and see if those guys pan out and develop the way they should. But when you have 2 top 10 picks, it's kind of hard to miss, right? I mean, you'd really have to screw it up at that point.
Yeah. Douglas Masters, straight jacket guy was Chris Angel, wasn't
Was it? I don't think so. Was it?
I don't know. He's got to be 50. Chris Angel's old now, right?
I don't know. Is he?
I feel like I watched him in high school.
Yeah, right.
That was a long time ago, folks. Yeah, I would say Chris Angel's probably too old for that. But I mean, I don't know how that world works. Maybe you can play into your 40s. Like some people,
and twist around upside down on a straight jacket.
I would have a fill-in. If I'm Chris Angel, I got my money. I want to fill in at this point.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, Kenny Pickett, 20 to the Steelers.
Yeah, the
first
only
occasion in which only one quarterback was picked in the opening round since 2013.
Yeah, it was definitely a bit of a shocker. Obviously the board fell well for the Bills. There was still a lot of players on the board that I liked, which is what I preached all offseason long leading up to this. I said there's only 24 guys going before the Bills pick, and in this case it was actually only 21 because we traded up 2 spots, or 22 guys, I guess, because we traded up 2 spots. But so much talent was falling to the Bills because teams were going in the direction of not necessarily positions of need for the Bills. And with only one quarterback going, I had 2 going before the Bills pick, and still only one went, and we had our pick of multiple guys that could have been excellent, fill-ins for the Bills. But obviously I was very happy with the way it worked out, and we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, one quarterback was a little surprising. But
did you get a chance to watch the quarterbacks at all?
I did.
It was not on the radar at all for the Bills. So, right, you got to put your priorities up front, right?
Right.
Watch a lot of receivers, watch running back, edge, right, linebacker.
And it wasn't much. I mean, I mainly watched a couple just highlights to see, like, how do they play? What team do I see them a fit for? Is this more of a, hand the ball off, short dink and dunk quarterback, or is this a, obviously the running quarterback is a big part of the NFL now. And I just thought Pickett was the guy. That was one. Right. I think it was one of only 2 that I absolutely nailed the team and the pick. I had like 9 out of the top 10 correct in terms of the picks, but not to the right teams. And that one
Yeah.
I did nail the
And I
matchup.
feel like I fell for the smoke. Like I knew the Steelers would probably take a quarterback.
Smoke was there though. That was
Yeah.
another takeaway for
Malik
me
Willis, right?
during the draft. I said this was the draft where the smoke was real for the most part, right? I said before and during the draft coverage, I'm somebody who says I trust what I believed before and not the smoke the week of the draft. But even with the number 1 overall pick, my choice was Aiden Hutchinson. I thought for sure it was all smoke and Jacksonville wasn't going to do that. And sure enough, it wasn't, right? It was Walker.
Yeah.
And that's what the rumors were going into it. Same thing about, certain guys falling because of injury or whatever, or, there were at least 3 picks in that first round that were linked within the last few days, including the Bills pick, Elam, right? That was the week of is when that changed to Elam's the guy versus, Booth or all these other names that we heard during the week. So that was one thing that, I was like, oh, okay, this year it really did. Those rumors last minute, closer to the end of before the draft, did come to fruition for a lot of teams.
Yeah, and I thought Kenny Pickett was going to fall for sure. Let's bring us to the next topic. Receiver edge stock up. 6 receivers in the top 20. 2 receivers traded off teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to see this run. I mentioned this before the draft. After watching the Bills-Chiefs playoff game, how can you not draft a receiver?
Yep.
Right? This is the new NFL. It seems like you
Mhm.
got to be able to beat these guys who don't miss, right? They're going to score on every single drive. You need all the weapons you can get, right? So I think that matches the stock up for receiver. And it's interesting to get into the A.J. Brown situation with Tennessee, where they just kind of, dump him because
Mhm.
he wanted more money, which he probably deserves. Right. So
Right.
what, $16 million a year, I believe, is what he's asking. And they say, well, I think the next guy can just do the same things you do. And you
Yeah.
locked
They
into a
made that
cheaper
decision.
deal, huge cap savings. Are we going to see more of this? Our team's going to pass
Wide
on
receiver to
for
me
that
is
kind
an
of
elite
price.
position, right? It's still an elite position. And this offseason, we saw receivers get paid more than we ever have before. I mean, big time this offseason, right? Because it is a premium position, but that makes it more valuable in the draft, just like edge always has been. Offensive linemen, you
Right.
can never have enough. But
Right.
edge is a
Five
position
edge
where
players taken round 1.
why is edge such a valuable position? Because when players become good, you all of a sudden have to pay them monster money to keep them around. And it's important to keep that cupboard full. So even if you have one, you're still looking to draft the next guy, just like the Bills did with Rousseau. And even though we had the young guys in there, we still signed Von
Right.
Miller.
Well,
Why?
it
Because we
seems to
want
me
to
that
be that
at
elite.
least the past few years, maybe the past 3 years, each draft's been deep on receiver. You can get a
Mhm.
valuable receiver in
I've
round
said
2,
that.
3, and
Yeah.
4.
Yeah. The
Maybe not
Bills did
a
that.
super athlete. Right.
The
Bills
Bills
did
did
that,
in
proves
round
that.
5. Right. That
But
was
I don't think you can get a big difference maker at edge in rounds 2, 3, and 4. I mean, it happens. I'm
correct.
not saying it's impossible, but if you want a premier edge player, you gotta get that in round 1.
Round 1.
Top 15.
Those guys go very, very
Just because
quickly.
those type of humans don't exist.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, talent level varies by position every year, right? This year was not a good quarterback year. In fact, some would say it was one of the worst ever for the NFL draft. And one quarterback went in the first round. The other guys didn't go for a lot later than some people mocked them. And edge and wide receiver being the one that rose the most. Again, during the offseason, when we started doing mock drafts, Olave was always on the board at 25, and I consistently said I would take him in a heartbeat if he was on the board, but he's not going to be on the board. I just don't see it happening. He's going to go to the Saints, picks earlier. And
Right.
I
Saints
think
give up 2 picks for him.
Yep. And it was. I
Cashing in.
mean, wide receivers again, even if you have an elite wide receiver like a Stephon Diggs, or in the case of the Saints, an injured star wide receiver in Thomas, you still want a guy to go next to him that can contend and get attention as well, so that both of your guys can become elite players and have opportunities during the game, and you're not keying in on the one guy and that's all you need to do for the game and you've stopped the offense. So that's why, like you said, that Bills Chiefs game showed, man, you cannot have
Right.
enough wide receiver
You need
action
firepower
in today's
at,
NFL.
all positions, it seems like.
And I would put running back in the devalued position as well, but that's been gradual over the past few
That's
years.
been a story for a few years. That's why I didn't put them
Yeah.
on here, but I went
Yeah, but it
quarterback,
doesn't stop.
safety.
But come
down.
on. But that doesn't stop people from constantly saying, "Oh, running back's going in the first round." And those of us with level heads consistently say, no, they're not, because they're not good enough to be taken in the first round. That's
Well,
not an elite talent.
maybe
I'm
it's
not
year by
looking at
year.
Saquon Barkley.
Last
Exactly.
year,
This year, there was not.
two
Win.
first rounders went last year
Correct.
in ETN and Harris.
But not to the Bills. And
I think those are premier running backs. I mean,
Exactly.
I think maybe in years past they maybe go top 10,
right.
top 15,
It depends
so,
on the talent every year. But
yeah.
but guys,
This year maybe the talent was off a little.
no, they were not first round guys. I said 3 guys would go in the second round. And I think 4 went in the second round. But yeah, that's where they belonged in my mind. Their talent level, their tape, their what they've showed. They're not a first round guy. There was way too much other talent that improved teams to pick the running backs. Now that doesn't mean one of these second round running backs isn't going to become a star in the NFL and a Hall of Famer, right? They very much could be. But drafting this year with what you had to go on, they're second round players, and that's where they belong.
Yeah,
And
we'll
I
see how
feel
it
like,
turns
yeah,
out.
that's more of a general
Right.
trend. Next year, quarterback will be back up. Safety is another interesting one. You have it on the list here. That's,
Yes,
stock down,
well,
but
I mentioned that because Kyle Hamilton falls to 14.
that was a big one.
Many
Yeah.
draft people, Daniel Jeremiah, others say he's top 5,
Yeah.
at least on boards, as a sure shot player, but he falls to 14. 31 Bengals take Hill, Daxton Hill from Michigan, and Kine to 32 for the Vikings. It just seems like safety is kind of one of those positions that just kind of falls off every year.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what
safety
the
again.
reasons are, but I mean, Daxton Hill, I think, was a guy who many analysts had 15 to
Went
20
toward the end. Yeah, right.
Ends
Yeah.
up going to 31. Just all those receivers go earlier. The value kind of shows itself, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think safety's down a little, and quarterback this year. Just to mention this again, I got it. Like the quarterback class wasn't as good as years past, but there's always a few teams that get desperate. I don't think we saw that this year. I think teams were a little more patient with the quarterback
Mhm.
position.
Yeah,
I mean,
surprisingly
even
so.
like Malik Willis should have been a second
Third
rounder
round.
minimum,
Yeah.
in my
Wow.
opinion. I mean, you got the arm talent. You just don't see that often, especially his athleticism, running ability. The game's changed. You want a running quarterback these days. There's something else going on there, but I think a lot of it has to do with teams we're just not needy at the position. Maybe there's
Right.
abundance in free agency. Maybe a lot of teams have their guy. We did see a lot of movement as well. So stock down for quarterback this year.
Definitely.
Anyway, let's get into the Bills picks here. A couple takeaways. Anything from undrafted players?
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from the undrafted players is that, it seems like every year there's at least one who sneaks in there and makes the team. A couple that I've fallen in love with over the years, including Reggie Gilliam, who's now a mainstay on the roster, basically. This year, because of the picks we did make, I think there is open competition for some of these positions, including at guard, right? Guard, we need depth at guard. We signed a couple of offensive linemen.
One of them from Northwest Missouri State.
Yes, right.
Tanner Owen.
We know that it tends to be that a lot of these smaller school guys are the ones who go undrafted and tend to be wanting to sign with clubs. I think the biggest takeaway is Beane mentioned even that the Bills now being such a premium team with a deep roster that it's going to be harder to sign undrafted free agents, but they were still able to find a number of guys to come in. I think one of the shockers for me was that wide receiver. We signed a couple of wide receivers at the position, right? Do you have the names in front of you?
App State,
Keith,
Malik Williams.
Uh-huh. Keith Corbin the third or whatever. What's his name?
Yeah, Neil Paiu.
Yeah.
From BYU.
So a couple of guys who maybe could have been drafted toward the end of the draft that end up coming to the Bills. So wide receiver already being a deep position for the Bills doesn't mean they're not looking for competition and saying, look, you need to prove it to get on this roster. Everybody's job is going to be up for grabs and competitive. And who knows what that position could be this year. Cornerback, defensive tackle, any of these guys who are undrafted can leave an impact to make this roster.
All right, so let me ask you this. We got looks like 2 linemen, 1 defensive lineman in the Syracuse guy.
Yes, yes.
Kingsley Jonathan, Syracuse. We have 2 receivers here. I'm sorry, we got 3 offensive linemen. We have running back, Blackshire from Virginia Tech. Trayvon Fuller, cornerback, and a tight end who was on a top 30 visit, Jalen Weidermeyer. Which player or which position, right? Because we haven't gone into depth on the actual players.
Mm-hmm.
Which position do you think has the best chance to make the roster?
Still offensive line, right? Because you can never have enough offensive linemen. And if you think about, going through training camp, the opportunities will be there for offensive linemen, right? We know that. They're going to rotate guys in, they're going to see what they got because we need depth. There's never enough depth. Sometimes they keep 10 guys on the roster, right? We have our 5 starters, but when you start looking at, is Cody Ford going to work out? We don't know. Are they going to keep him and give him a chance? Sure. He was free to do that. But if he plays like he did last year in training camp, that job is wide open. Like, I'd be glad if I'm a unrestricted free agent to come in and compete for that job, right? And I think that's one that screams it. Wide receiver, it's going to be a lot harder for those guys to make this roster, a lot harder. Defensive end, I think that's more. A lot of these guys too, don't forget, are competing for practice squad positions that are valuable, right?
I think that's what I was going to mention. Is it's practice squad and special teams.
Yes.
Right. Who's going to make the special teams spots? That's what this comes down to for me.
Mm-hmm.
Charles and Douglas say tight end.
Yes, that's another one. Third tight end.
Don't forget about Gilliam. We got Tommy Sweeney. Right. Gilliam's kind of that hybrid player, the added value there. That's going to be a tough one to crack, in my opinion.
It is.
Yeah, so I'd say I think there's a spot for receiver. I personally think there is.
Even after drafting one, who are you giving up?
Yeah, well, I just think injuries happen, right? And there's always
on the practice squad or on the roster, you're saying?
I'd say on the roster, which moves up the practice squad, which opens spots up, right? So, yeah, I think receiver is always something you should be looking at, especially in this offense, right? They pass the ball a ton. You got 2 spots gone. I know they bring in Crowder and a couple other guys, but it seems to me that they're only an injury away from one of these players getting boosted up. So I'd say practice squad, if I'm looking at it, I would want a receiver.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea too, right? You can never, especially, again, being next man up, the practice squad. What I was going to mention is defensive tackle, right? The kid from Syracuse can play, right? He's a developmental guy. He might not be a starter right now, but if you can stash him on the practice squad and then bring him up when needed, or, develop him for next year to make the roster and be a depth piece, that would be amazing. The only other issue you have is because the Bills are so good and have a stacked roster, some of the guys you put on the practice squad are going to get poached by other teams, as we saw happen last year. So even if they're good enough, if they do show out in training camp, they might be picked up by another team and the Bills are left without them. But they're definitely going to have their shot to show that they can bring value to this team. And I think you put it perfectly. They're looking for all-around players who can play special teams, contribute in different ways, but also depth, right? If you got to have that next man up, you have a number of practice squad positions for a reason. Offensive line, defensive line are positions of high impact. You're going to definitely want, not that any position in football isn't high impact, but you're going to want that depth. You always have that depth. And the Bills have been consistent about the players that they protect on the practice squad tending to be defensive and offensive linemen. And obviously for good reason. Again, those are the guys they want to keep around to have as emergency. If somebody gets injured, call them up to the actual 53-man roster. Yeah.
All right, let's jump into the actual picks here. We're going to go bottom to top. So let's start with round 7, pick 10, 231 overall, linebacker Balin Spector from Clemson.
Yeah.
What are some takeaways you got for Mr. Balin Spencer's 7th round pick?
Well, it was the last pick of the Bills, for the last pick by the Bills in this draft. And they had already taken a linebacker. So I'd say one of my big takeaways is, wow, they want competition at linebacker. So they're not necessarily content with the guys competing for that third linebacker spot is up for grabs, right? That's the one that was Klein. They got rid of Klein for contract reasons, and now there's a competition open. But we even said on this show multiple times that there's 3 guys on the roster already who can compete for that spot. Maybe they trust one of them. This pick tells me, okay, they really do want depth and competition at this level. That and the special teams play that we just mentioned for the undrafted players who signed also applies here, right? They took a guy who they thought might get drafted and they want to give him a chance. It doesn't mean he's going to make the roster by any means. He's going to compete. They drafted him. He's going to be there. Balin Spector equals Super Bowl.
Balin Spencer, Super Bowl, folks. It could be true there. It could be true. I mean, the 5 years of experience at Clemson, he's seen the Isaiah Simmons of the world. Little added value there, right? But this, for me, one of my takeaways is special teams player, right?
Yes, exactly.
Tyler Metakevich type player. For me, he comes in. Going to be hard to kind of earn your way into the roster, right? But I think special teams is a spot for Spencer or Spector.
And and it doesn't mean that he's not going to, just because they drafted another linebacker, doesn't mean this guy isn't going to get an equal chance.
He might. I mean, look,
the guy, right?
Guys like Andre Smith, Terrell Dodson, they earn their way up the roster over time. He's just at a huge disadvantage because they've been here a while. Let's not forget about Joe Giles Harris, which I'm not too familiar with. But just guys in the roster who's been with the team a while. They know how the routine works. They're familiar with the area. It's going to be tough for Balin to crack the roster, in my opinion. Let's not forget AJ Klein still available on the free agent market.
That's right.
Maybe a cheaper option, right? Anyway, let's get rolling. Lots of picks to get to. So let's go to round 6, pick 31. Offensive tackle, Luke Tenuta.
Yeah.
Right. Tenuta.
First takeaway for me was he's more of a tackle than a guard. So swing tackle player, high upside. I know a lot of the guys who went deeper than I did on positions like this were excited about this pick, the Cover One team, because he is, more of a developmental player, obviously going this late, but has potential that they like as a swing tackle player.
6'8", really tall guy, shorter
athletic.
arms, shorter arms than Deion Dawkins. I mean, obviously there's workarounds for that, but just when you're doing the measurables, that's probably why he falls to round 6, right?
Right. And you're not necessarily looking at him as your third tackle, although he could technically earn that spot. But having a fourth tackle, that's a valuable thing to have somebody who can play both positions. We know they love that kind of versatility. And who knows, maybe they do test him out at guard too and see if he can play there as well. You never know. But, he's athletic, he's strong, he's a big offensive lineman. We expect him to be able to compete. And similar to the last pick, let's see what you got. You can make this roster, or you can get cut and put on the practice squad, and that wouldn't surprise me either.
Another takeaway for me is the Bills didn't get enough for Wyatt Teller. Right, another Virginia Tech tackle going here. Wyatt Teller traded to Cleveland 3 years ago now, for a 5th rounder. Just kind of funny we take another one here. So
in the 6th round,
I think Beane did mention something like that too. Maybe you should have been a little more patient, but you just don't. You never know, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to make tough decisions in the time, and
good teams.
Beane's made it.
Good teams develop players, and they start for other teams, right?
Exactly.
So just a little different side of things, but just kind of reminded me of that. All right, moving on to the next one. Pick 6 in round 6. Cornerback Christian Benford. What do you got for takeaways for Christian Benford?
Depth, right? This told me I was, again, one of the things my goal coming into the draft was take 2 cornerbacks and still sign a veteran cornerback, because we don't know what's happening with Trey White, although they did come out and say they are aiming to get Trey White ready for the season week 1, which is phenomenal, and that would be great for Bills fans. But still, I would rather play it safe and say, even if he's 90% week 1, let's not play him until he's 100%, okay? Yes. Because we want him ready for the playoffs this year and not, hobbling his way through the season. But this is a good depth piece. I love the idea of 2 cornerbacks. Bring them in, let them compete. Competition for Dane Jackson. Competition, not that our first round pick should work out, obviously, and we'll get to Elam in a minute. But this it brings up what role cornerbacks play on this team. And you can, again, that's another position where you can't have enough depth when you play consistently 3 cornerbacks on the field. And if one of them goes down, you want to have guys who can come in and fill that roster. So could he take the place of, a Dane Jackson? Maybe. I don't see that happening in his, rookie year, but depth piece, could he make the roster and be that fourth, fifth cornerback go-to guy? Sure. And those guys still see snaps on this team, right? And
Yeah, I got 2 takeaways for Benford.
Mhm.
Number 1, the Bills need developmental talent, right? That bottom part of the cornerback room. We know Dane Jackson can play. Obviously took Elam first round. He's going to play.
Mhm.
Taron Johnson, Trey White, right? They're starters. It's the people below that. We know Cam Lewis is probably next, but then after that, who's up and
Yeah.
coming, right? You always want to be developing talent. It seems like I think that's why they draft Benford
And
here.
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
call Cam Lewis a lock on this roster at this
no,
point
but
either.
I mean, I know we saw him on the field. He's the most
Certainly.
recent cornerback on the
Yeah,
roster outside of the guys that start, obviously,
exactly.
uh, that has
And
seen action, right, in a game.
I guess another takeaway for me that I could have mentioned earlier when you were talking about themes of the first round or themes of the draft, versatility became a big theme in this draft. I feel there were a lot of guys who are listed at one position, but really probably are playing one or two positions, listed as linebacker, but could be
Right,
linebacker, safety, cornerback,
right.
whatever. And this is one of those where, people were saying, okay, he's listed as a cornerback. Can he be a safety? Maybe they're going to try and develop him into a safety, which would make sense in a lot of ways for the Bills. But at this point, I think it's safe to assume he is a cornerback, defensive back,
Mhm.
whatever you want to label him.
Sure. I
But
think he
that
can move to safety,
versatility
but
is a big theme. Yeah,
yeah. And he's got good instincts was my second takeaway. 7 interceptions, 18 pass breakups,
big deal.
202 tackles. I mean, great tackle ability. This guy could really grow, which is something, right, valuable for the team. Right, other guys on the roster, we have Elijah Griffin, been in the league for a little bit, but interesting. He played quarterback at USC his freshman year, so that's
Hmm.
kind of interesting. But Tim Harris, practice squad, drafted by the Niners, signed a futures deal. Nick McLeod, practice squad. He had a stint with the Bengals, but then came back, signed a futures deal with the Bills. So little competition there. Let's move on to one of the fan favorites here, the punt god.
Yes. This was disappointingly right after I left the coverage on Cover One, although we were all hoping that somehow they would end up with Matt Araiza. And
Araiza.
sure enough, 2 punters went before him, even though he was, as thought of, at least by most people doing mock drafts, as the best punter in the round, and he's going to go in round 4. Well, 2 punters did go in round 4, and he went in the top of round 6, really the first pick of round 6. So you could call that round 5 too. But certainly the guys we just talked about in the other 6th round picks and in 7, depth, competing for a spot. This guy ain't competing for a spot. It's his to lose, right? We all know that the Bills punter position was abysmal, right? And we were shocked that they didn't outright drop and cut Matt Hawk. So now with Araiza on the roster and this guy being the pick, you're saying this guy could be our future punter for the next 4 or 5 years. And let's see what he can do. As long as he can do the holding side of things, which I know was a question with him. And there obviously are other questions about him being too strong in the leg
Right.
and
I was
doing
going to mention
touchbacks
this.
versus corner kicks. Yeah, but I mean, I think this is a valuable piece to the Bills roster this year. He's going to contribute day 1, week 1, right? And that's exactly what you want.
Right. He's definitely got special ability. No doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when you're pinned deep, I mean, this guy could have a real impact on games. You can flip the field with your punter. I mean, that's really a special thing. And I've never seen a punter kick at 86 yards. And
Yeah.
he does it consistently, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
scary. But there's question about accuracy. I mean, obviously, the NFL game's a little different. Uh, Less blockers. I think you got to get the ball a little faster, right? Guys coming at you are faster.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, his punt average. Let me get you exact numbers here. Punt average 51.2. Punted the ball 79 times for an average of 51.2.
That's insane.
That's the highest of any NFL player last year.
Yeah.
Highest being 50 by AJ Cole for the Raiders. I mean, that's got to
Not too
scream
shabby.
something now. Also, punted the ball 79 times. kind of middle of the road at how many times he punted. Lots of punters in the NFL kicked it more times than that. But
Yeah,
that's insanity.
it is. And I mean, potential obviously is the roof, right? He could be the best punter in the league next year and nobody would be surprised, I think. But
Right.
at the same time, you do have that limit of can he hold the ball? We don't know quite yet. And hopefully he can. I'm sure he can. And then, will he have an issue of too many touchbacks, the ball going too far
Well,
at
here's my
times?
theory.
But you have to be coached on that, right?
This
We
might
have
be
special teams coaches for a reason. That's their job,
yeah.
like to get
This
this
might be
guy to
full
know.
blown fact. You tell me, you're the scientist. You're not going to have that kind of punt average with Josh Allen on the field. Period. It's going to be
Well,
way, way lower than that.
you mean
I'm
number of
thinking.
punts?
Well,
You can
I'm
still
thinking
have that
average.
punt
No,
average.
punting
Because
average.
even if
Josh
they
Allen
punt,
doesn't
it'll be
get
from the
pinned
40.
too often.
Yeah,
right. Your
right.
opportunities are going to go way down.
Right.
We need you to punt it from the,
Punt it out of bounds. You got to
from the
learn to punt
40
it.
to the
Corner
to
kick.
the
Yeah.
5. That's what we
Mhm.
really need, right? Consistency. I want to see consistency from the punter.
Yes. Well,
But
look at
if
as
you
long
are
as he's
pinned,
not like
it
Hawk,
does
who's
happen. Right?
making a goddamn sandwich back
Yes.
there and taking his time, like he's like, oh, look at the people in the stands before I kick this ball. Like that
Yeah.
was so frustrating at times.
Yes.
And he screwed up on multiple occasions, and it was just unacceptable.
And then
which
I
is
think
why I think he's
this
going to
guy's
be.
the most popular punter to maybe ever come in the league. right,
Yeah.
right at
And
this stage, right?
exactly right. And I
Hasn't kicked
think
one ball, but expectations are high. Let's just say
certainly
that.
for the Bills, I've never seen a punter get this much praise, right? And
Yeah,
again, that's probably the man who's going to see the field the least of all of the starters and guys who contribute, but still a position that can improve and just did instantly, basically, with this pick in the
right.
6th round.
I mean,
How many
if
6th
you
rounders
are
can you say
pinned,
are going to have that big
if
of an impact?
if he gets the win too, I mean, he can give you a touchback if you're pinned back, and that's a game changer. And he has a real chance to be a special player. Really does.
And how about the Bills now with two of the strongest legs in the NFL, right? And that is insane to think about. The kicker and the punter, two
Yes.
of the best at their position
And the
in the
quarterback.
NFL.
Let's not forget.
Strongest. We
Big,
don't know
big ass and legs.
if Araiza is going to be, the best punter yet because he has to prove it, but he certainly has one of the strongest legs. That's
Yes.
not out for contention. And Bass is the same, right? He's proven it. So Bass and Araiza are going to make a hell of a combination of kicking the ball in Buffalo, even in
Yes.
that wind and weather in Buffalo, right? The ball is going to get punished by those two.
Yeah. Yeah, and just real quick, Pat McAfee, I don't know if you saw him talk about Matt Araiza, but Pat McAfee talked about practicing, and he tipped over a soccer goalpost with a soccer ball. I mean, that's just insanity.
Wow. Yeah, that's power,
I
man.
just can't even think. I can't even fathom that. Anyway, let's move on to Khalil Shakir, 5th round pick, 148.
Yeah.
Does he fill the void of maybe some of the talent that left? The Cole Beasleys,
Absolutely.
Emmanuel Sanders.
This was one of my favorite picks, and I think overall one of the most positive reactions to a pick on our Cover 1 coverage was in the 5th round. Again, my approach was if you don't get one in round 1, which I didn't think we would because I thought they would be gone off the board, there were a lot of guys I loved in round 4 and 5. By the way, my guy Romeo Dubes ends up in Green Bay a few picks before this, right, in round 4. And Shakir was the name there. When we were on the coverage, I said, Shakir's the name I want right now. Like, give me Shakir. He's the one who fits the Bills' needs the most. And my comparison was directly to Cole Beasley. This isn't a 6'8" wide receiver who's got long arms and can, do things that way, but he's crisp at running routes. He can make guys miss. He's reliable. He catches the ball well. And he can end up being the Cole Beasley in this Bills offense. And that was a big hole left by that departure. The big conversation, too, was do you go with an elite? Do you draft a guy who's competing for the number 2 position on the wide receiver depth chart, or do you draft somebody who's going to be a slot receiver? And to me, in Shakir, they ended up with the slot guy who is going to fill that Cole Beasley role and can make guys miss and make big plays and make plays on the sideline. I am so excited for this Shakir pick. And overall, the analysis I read too, he was one of the most hyped picks, saying this could end up being the steal of the draft in terms of the production expected from him, which the wide receiver position was deep in this draft.
Sure, I agree. I mean, big statement, but I just think the versatility. That's one takeaway I got. The Bills have been after versatility since McDermott's been here, basically, ever since his second year, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's been a big thing. Daboll was big on versatility.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like they're still in that same mold, right? Somebody who could play inside and outside. Maybe that's just where the league is now. You got to be able to change it up, but that's comes off the comes out to me from Khalil Shakir.
Right. He can run the ball. He can do all sorts of stuff.
Certainly, there's probably some things he's got to work on being drafted this late. But also, I'm curious about punt return ability. Some people said he can do that, but we won't know, right? But that's maybe a need that the team needs. Are we going to have McKenzie doing kick returns? That's something I'm looking at for a guy like Shakir.
Yes,
Can he do those
exactly.
things? Right,
Contributions to the return game. Yeah, I believe we looked that up. He does do kick returns, but he's not returned a punt, or maybe he only returned like one punt.
Right, so I'd be curious to see how that looks.
Can compete for that as well, for sure.
And maybe he doesn't, but then we go with McKenzie. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I think McKenzie's good at it. You run that risk that we all know, and I'm not even going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Round 3, no 4th round pick for the Bills this year.
They traded
Terrell Bernard, linebacker. What kind of takeaways you got for Terrell Bernard?
This was by far the most puzzling choice, if you will. The next pick was the offensive lineman that I eyed for round 2, which was Dylan Parham. And I think that would have been an easy contributor for the Bills day one. You have depth. Day one, you have competition. You have potential long-term starter. So the pick of Bernard was a bit shocking. And overall, again, on Cover 1 coverage, there was disappointment. There was anger. There was shock by all of us. But I think my reaction was, okay, not the guy I thought they were going to pick, but that's fine. What role does he have on this team? He's more of a Matt Milano role than a Tremaine Edmonds. And if we were going to pick a linebacker, the general thought process was, well, you have to pick somebody to be in Edmonds' space since he's a free agent next year. And, we don't know what the situation is going to be with him. But watching his tape and learning more about him after the draft, this is a football player, much like one of my favorite players in the draft, Nakobe Dean, who fell due to shoulder injury concerns in this draft to just a few picks before the Bills took Bernard. When you watch his tape, you see a football player. He's very good at tackling, pursuit. He can, rush the passer very well, but he's not quite as polished as, somebody who can come in and start day one or something.
Sure.
Love that it brings depth to the team. I definitely think it's signaled right away, like, okay, they want somebody to be that third linebacker, and maybe Bernard can fill that role, even though, again, he was more of like the Matt Milano type linebacker, and that's one of his main comps. He can still be on the field and be that third linebacker and rush the passer, which is something he does very well.
Right.
Or he can, compete for depth at the position and maybe lose out to one of the other linebackers, but maybe still worth the pick, at least in the eyes of Brandon Beane. They clearly saw something in him that said, this is a guy we want on our team.
Yeah, and I think he is undersized for a linebacker, but I think that's where the league is going. And what the Bills have done with Matt Milano has been really impressive. I don't think we talk about that enough.
Love Milano.
Milano's
one of my favorite players.
He's very undersized, right? 6 foot, 223. I mean, that's
coverage, right? That's another big
undersized
part of
linebacker,
game.
right? And I think this guy's right in that same mold. I think the Bills kind of maybe saw some of Matt Milano in him and saw that they could develop that, right? Another thing about Bernard is his responsibilities kind of grew over time, right? He had 86, snaps in the slot.
Yes, yeah.
661 in the box. I mean, going back to 2019, he had about similar numbers, but actually doubled in 2021 from 19 as far as playing in the slot. So, I mean, that's something maybe the Bills are looking at. I know Matt Milano plays in the slot a lot, just that versatility. So I would say that's kind of what maybe caught their eye about Bernard.
Definitely has high upside. And again, I don't want somebody in the chat said like there was optimism at Cover 1 as well. Yes, I'm talking about live. Again, the best part of doing the coverage is you see our instant reaction to,
right.
And most of us were like, the Bills picked who?
Yes.
Not that we didn't know who he was, but like, oh, that's a different direction than we were expecting.
Well,
and
also, like,
why?
when Milano goes down, it's almost AJ Klein comes in. You almost have to change the scheme a little bit.
Right.
Just
And
two different type of players. I think Bernard now can come in and fill that Matt
Yes.
Milano mold if he, knock on wood, goes down.
Yes.
Right. So I like the pick. I think it does fit that sort of mold. It just comes down to, can he develop into what Matt Milano did? Matt Milano seems like a unicorn, right?
Yes.
A 5th round pick who becomes a permanent starter, who turns down big money to stay with the team. I mean, there's only one Matt Milano.
Exactly. And we have him, luckily.
Exactly. So let's move on to round 2, pick 31. I'm not sure how you feel about this. I know you hate running backs, but this is a round 2 running back, Anthony.
Yes, that's right. Was it round
James
1?
Cook.
No. And you know what they
University of
didn't do? They did not trade up for a running back, which would have been a bad idea in my mind. They traded down twice and ended up with 2 more picks because they knew they wanted to take the running back they wanted in the position he was valued at, not reaching for, trading up into the top of this round to try and get a certain other running back that was the apple of a lot of people's eye, cough, cough, cover 1. But the guy they end up with is running back James Cook in this spot. Was it the player I wanted? No. Do I like the pick? Absolutely. There's a lot that James Cook can do for this team right now. So my initial takeaway was, you have another weapon for Josh Allen, somebody who catches the ball out of the backfield, somebody who can, be that running back number 2. What does this mean for the rest of the running backs on the roster, aka Zach Moss and Duke Johnson? I don't know. Who is he going to take Johnson's spot? And now he's the pass catching running back, and they end up keeping Moss because of the years he has left. Possible. However, I definitely see something happening there before the season starts. Either one of them is traded or moved on from, or they wait and see if there's an injury, God forbid.
Is the value right for you?
Yes. And he was one of the running backs that I saw going in the 3rd round or in the 2nd round, excuse me. So the top 2, in most people's minds, I did not see Spiller. I think, remember when we analyzed running backs on the show, my reaction to Spiller was like, meh. I would have been disappointed if the Bills took Spiller here. I would have been like, no, why? I don't see his value. James Cook was the upside running back that I had as number 3 that I wanted and could see the value that he brings to the Bills, especially when you're looking at, pass catching.
The Bills are really showing their hand this offseason.
Yeah.
Right. You go after J.D. McKissick, you bring in Duke Johnson, you
draft and now you draft James Cook.
Look, the Bills are going to throw the ball to the running back, period. It's so obvious.
Yep.
Mike Shula goes back to, the 2 running back sets with Carolina all those years. Ken Dorsey's there as well. They had huge success with that. I mean, pass catching running backs was big, right, in that offense. Mike Shula again with the Giants. Saquon Barkley, obviously, they had I forget his name now, Gilliam, I think, pretty decent running back from Clemson as number 2. Go to Denver, 2 running back sets there as well. So, I mean, I think they've been looking for that second running back. James Cook, he has huge ability in running routes. Arguably the best route running back in the draft, right? And I think that's going to be huge value with a guy like Josh Allen who could run it on you. But I think the Bills are really showing their hand with this pick. That's one
definitely.
of my takeaways.
Certainly a contributor. Certainly the value where he belonged. Again, you picked up 2 picks and took a running back rather than trading up to get a running back. You took the guy who can be an upgrade on day 1. He's going to make this roster.
Right.
He can have an impact right away. And when he's on the field, it doesn't mean the Bills are throwing the ball to the running back, right? They could be handing it off to this guy and he can still make a play.
Sure.
But, does he bring that much of an upgrade? I don't know.
He's very, very good in the passing game. Something the Bills haven't had.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We've been waiting to see that from TJ Yeldon.
Yards after catch.
Right.
Speed in terms of getting it to that dump off running back, right? Our running backs currently do not.
We saw that a little bit with Matt Breida, but this will really open up that part of the game, in my opinion.
By speed, I mean that burst too,
right,
not
if
like
he can get up to speed.
Yeah.
Another takeaway. I don't know if this is does this matter or not? James Cook training with Devin Singletary pre-draft. I mean, he's already in the embedded show before the draft. I mean, is that homework or what's going on here? Was he pre-drafted?
Coincidence.
The Bills do their homework is the takeaway.
Exactly. And trust me, they talked to Devin Singletary probably and we're like, hey, what do you think of this kid? Can he be the one next to you? And
Yeah,
obviously, he
watching
probably got
Embedded,
glowing
and I look,
reviews.
is that James Cook already? Already in the Embedded show? I mean, that's doing your homework, folks.
Yeah, the Bills know their guys, that's for sure.
Any other takeaways for James Cook?
Um, n- the big thing was no running back in round 1, which is great. Running back where it belongs.
Let it
Impact
let it
player.
go. Let it go. It's
I'm
over now.
sorry, did any
It's all
running back
over.
go in round 1?
It's over
No,
now.
it's just a fact. I'm not gloating about it. I'm telling you that I
Yeah.
was right then because it was the
Yeah.
right decision, the right thing to do.
Save a
No
little
team
bit.
valued it.
We're gonna have this same exact argument next year, so save
I'm
some
sure
energy.
we will again, but
Yeah.
it's still, no.
It's become an annual thing. So.
Other needs. It maybe running back is the only need next year, and we do take one in round 1. I'm not somebody who's never running back in round 1. It's just that the talent has to match the value at round 1. And here
Yeah.
we took a cornerback, which was the right move all along, which was the preachy move that I kept saying. Your biggest hole is cornerback. There is 5, 6, 7 cornerbacks who can go in
Yes.
this first round. Pick the best cornerback on your board at 25. In this case, 23.
Yes.
So, yes.
Which
It
brings
was
us to round 1, pick 23.
Mhm.
Kaiir Elam.
Yes.
I think we did a lot of work on the other cornerbacks, the Andrew Booth,
Mhm, mhm.
McDuffie. Kind of slept on Kaiir Elam a little
Yeah,
bit. At
until
least
the
I
week
know
of the
you and I
draft.
did because we watched film and stuff together.
Yeah,
So
until the week of the draft when his name came up a lot more. And
right.
then I started looking
Yeah.
into him, and, my prediction, my final prediction for the draft for the Bills pick was Andrew Booth, but we knew he had injury concerns, which did drop him in the draft a lot. And I said, if it's not Booth, then I want Elam because he matched what the Bills were looking at, and for no other reason than that, really, other than I mean, I liked his tape, but he wasn't one of my guys on the radar until I heard the Bills were interested, and he made sense at the position. So although Booth, fell for injury concerns, I think Elam, the more I learn about this guy, the more I absolutely love him as a player, as a cornerback. I mean, as a contributor on your team. He is processed through and through. He is developmental through and through. He is everything you want on this roster
And
for
so that's
Sean
what
McDermott.
outside of a personal tragedy, the only other requirement is to tell somebody in the interview that you take notes.
Yeah. Yeah. But he
Right?
had his notebook
I
with him,
say
and he's
personal
like,
tragedy because it seemed
"Here's
like
what I
for a
do."
while ESPN every
Yeah,
single
that's right.
draft
That's
they were
what they
talking about personal
discuss.
tragedy. So there's 2 requirements to get drafted. One's tell them you take notes about your football plays, right? The other one is, your brother's got to die in your arms.
Yeah.
I don't
Something
know
so
if he has
terrible.
that part, but it just seems like those are the 2 things. Kaiir Elam comes out and says, "Yeah, I take notes on my football," right? As I think most corners at this level should or currently do,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
But that little clip, everyone's been talking about that.
Yeah, and then what did he say? He said, "Put the playbook on the plane."
Yeah,
And they
that's true.
did, right? Put the playbook on the plane, but the clip, even the small clip we saw of his interview, you're like, "This is the guy for Buffalo." And the more you see about him when he's being interviewed, when he's on talking business of football, when he's saying, "Here's what I saw on the field, here's how I can improve, here's what,
Mhm.
I learned about the situation, here's how I grew as an individual from this." He's
Right.
mature, he's ready to go, and I'm willing to say that he's going to be one of the best things that has happened to Sean McDermott as a head coach on this team. Sean McDermott is going to develop this guy into a perennial Pro Bowler at the position. I am confident that with his skill set and the ability of McDermott at that position,
Well,
this is the best match made in heaven for Buffalo since the drafting of Josh
well,
Allen.
you now have 2 first-round cornerbacks, which is gonna be brand new for this team, right?
Mhm.
This at CB2, Kaiir Elam's a much better athlete than Levi Wallace. And that's not to discredit Levi Wallace. He's a hell of a player. But I mean, a first-round athlete is something this defense hasn't seen yet.
Right?
Right? I think you go back and look at Kaiir Elam's 2020 film, he plays lights out, right? This guy maybe would have went higher if he continued that trajectory.
Mhm.
Last year, you learn he played through an injury, changes your perspective a little bit. But yeah, somebody who wants to grind, who wants to get better. I mean, with that athleticism, it'll be really fun to see what kind of player he can develop into, right? We've seen Dayton
Absolutely.
Jackson hold his own in this defense. We've
Yes.
seen undrafted Levi Wallace hold his own in this
Absolutely.
defense.
And now you've got somebody
So,
with all the talent in the world and the right mindset and
right.
wherewithal for this team. It was the right thing to do all along.
Yes. Put 13 seconds back on the clock, okay? We're ready this time.
Had to say it.
Yes. Any other
Let's go.
thoughts? How about Dane Jackson? Brandon Beane says he still has a chance to start.
Absolutely.
He's
If
earned that for sure.
I think that if you look into week 1, right now, if we don't have Trey White, Dane Jackson is CB1 for God's sake. So that now I think with the drafting of Elam, you have Dane Jackson and Elam. That gives you a little more comfortability at the position. And you still have the competition and the depth that we've all talked about. And, we're set at the CB3 position. We have depth that we brought in to compete. We have guys who have been on this roster that can still fill in and play, outside of Levi, obviously, who's moved on now. But I'm confident in the Bills' ability, at the position now, which is what we needed. However, I would not be surprised if they still go out and sign another veteran cornerback to come in and kind of teach these guys and keep them level-headed and be the presence in the room that you know what you're getting. Because we still don't know what these rookies are going to give us. We don't know that Kaiir Elam is going to be able to start on day 1 if needed. And if you have a veteran in the room and Trey White isn't back, you feel much more comfortable having the veteran and Kaiir Elam so that, maybe Kair's not ready. The veteran gets most of the snaps. By week 3, Elam is the start.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think there's a lot of pressure to tackle at cornerback in this defense, right? Something Levi Wallace would struggle for a while. Something Dane Jackson really thrives at is tackling. And that'll be Kaiir Elam's toughest thing to learn, in my opinion. He's got all the ability to cover. He's covered the best receivers in college football. No doubt about that. He's held his own against them.
Yeah.
It's coming up and stopping these big running backs and breaking off blocks. That'll be a big challenge for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll see. And obviously the Bills have a big defensive line now, and maybe they're saying, you know what, we want these corners who can do their job and cover the receivers, and the rest of the guys will take care of the front.
All right. So what's your final grade for the Bills? No bias. No bias now.
No. My grade was a solid B. A solid B.
I like
not
that.
B plus, whatever. I do grading for a living, right? So this
Approved.
draft is definitely approved, right? Solid B. Again, I give the Kaiir Elam an A plus for sure pick. Again, the Cook pick, he was picked where he was. That I'd give a B plus to, right? So the third pick,
I like
Bernard, I mean, I think B is where the rest of the picks work out. So they kind of balance each other out.
What's different
solid
yeah.
B.
I mean, you could say they went best available, and it just happened to work out that they filled 2 big needs. I mean, there's that argument. We're never going to know what their board actually looked like. Only a few people will, right? But it seems like maybe they were going for needs this year, where I feel like last year they kind of went best available. True and true.
Yes.
Right. So I like the B. I don't think it was. Yeah, exactly. And I don't think it was an over the top draft. Like, hey, oh my God, this is the best draft ever.
Exactly.
It was not a bad draft, no doubt about that. And we'll see.
Exactly.
That's just how it goes with this stuff.
I think you could argue three players who will impact the team from day 1. Elam, obviously, as a first round pick. Cook, was running back a need? So many people said running back was a need. No, you're wrong. Running back was not a need. It was a luxury position that could be upgraded. It could definitely be upgraded, but it was not a need. Cornerback was a need. We had bodies. We needed bodies.
I think it's a
running
need.
Back was an upgradable position, but we had 3 guys on the roster, 4 if you count.
I think running back is a need because it's now Ken Dorsey's show. It's now Mike Shula's there with him, helping him to do what they want to do. They need a James Cook type player. This is why they go after the J.D. McKissick, right? That would have been a huge get for them. This is why Duke Johnson's on the roster right now. They need that to do what they want to do and run the offense that they want to run. So I would say that it was a need now, but maybe it wasn't last year. Right.
And then Araiza in the 6th round, obviously, is the other one that is instant impact player. I expect him to be the punter on day 1. And if he isn't, oh boy, that's going to be one of the biggest letdowns in draft history when your nickname is Punt God and you're not the starting punter.
Expectations are high. We'll just say that. But Tyler Bass went through something. This guy's a YouTube star before he gets to the league. And it worked out for him. So just do what Tyler did, All right, last one here. Last topic of the night. What's the opportunity cost, right? maybe some players that went after the Bills that they could have had. Who's your biggest disappointment?
Dylan Parham, I already spoke to it earlier. I think
What round are you talking?
third round, so
Third round.
directly after our pick was Dylan Parham. And I was pounding the table for him in the second round, and he goes in the third round, the next pick after the linebacker pick, which again was more of like a
Dylan Parham,
linebacker
guard from Memphis, ends up going to the Raiders.
One pick after the Bills in the third round.
You wanted him because you think we need guard.
I just wanted guard depth. He seemed like a great addition. Again, he can compete to start day one and be a fill-in after we only have Saffold for a year. So he could learn under Saffold, doesn't have to be the starter, can be a fill-in guy when needed, and then be the starter next year just like that. But the Bills decided to wait on guard, right? Coming into next year's draft, guard might be our biggest position in need I think who's free agent, you know?
And Brandon Beane's going to find a free agent. I think that's kind of what they do. That's kind of their system, right? We get undervalued free agents, bring them in, and they give us grade A talent. Darrell Williams, right, who is still a free agent.
Yes, he could very well come back. That would be great.
Play guard.
And you can't ignore the draw to Buffalo anymore. I said this in the Cover One chat afterwards, right? The fact of the matter is the Buffalo Bills are Super Bowl contenders. So anybody who's still on the free agent market, be a veteran or, somebody who's trying to come back or whatever their situation may be, you look at this Bills roster and you say, if I go there, I'm competing for a Super Bowl. I could be under the biggest spotlight. I could get myself a ring. That is a huge draw. Nakobe Dean. Oh,
Nakobe Dean.
Like
Timothy obviously says Nakobe Dean's the opportunity cost. Biggest opportunity cost for the
8
Bills.
picks before the Bills as well at linebacker in that third round. So he fell because of the shoulder injury concerns.
Right. Probably on the medical list for the Bills.
Exactly. Maybe they completely flagged him.
Yep. He ends up going to the Eagles. Could get a starter out of the third round right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Who else are you missing out on? You know me, I liked Christian Watson from North Dakota State. He ends up in Green Bay.
What a haul for Green Bay.
I was feeling good that the Bills were gonna nab him up in round 1. So for me, that's the opportunity cost. I think he's gonna develop into a great player for Green Bay. I do like that he went to the Packers and not the Chiefs.
And Romeo's right there with him. So I mean,
where did he go? I missed that one.
Green Bay. So they have Watson and now Dubes. I mean, as much as people criticize him for taking defensive players, and not keeping Aaron Rodgers happy, they got a haul this year. So
we talked about this last week. Just Christian Watson, you can just see it's going to be shootout after shootout. Josh Allen's the standard. Pat Mahomes is now the standard. I think you needed all the weapons you can get. Seeing that big run on receivers, I thought maybe the Bills would, get a little more needy, maybe panic a little and nab up one of those top talents. But it didn't happen. Stuck to their guns. Hopefully it works out.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we have to mention is the division, right? The teams in the division. The Jets, this had to be, I was texting with a couple of my friends who were Jets fans. This had to be the best day as a Jets fan, or the best couple of days as a Jets fan.
Sure.
In 10 years since they beat New England in the playoffs, right? And that was, it's phenomenal haul. 3 guys who I think were top 10 talent in that first round they got. 3 top 10 players in the first round. That's going to make you better instantly.
Yeah, now, I think their defense will get better, but you did nothing to help your quarterback. I guess Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. What do you mean? They got one of the best wide receivers.
Yeah, we'll see what he turns into. I think could have had Deebo Samuel, right? Rumors out there.
Well, I mean, they decided not to go that direction, and I think that was the right move, to be honest. They're a team that wants to build. They're still building. They are not competing for a playoff spot this year.
Get Garrett Wilson. So it's Gardner, Wilson, and Johnson. That's right.
Yeah, so they very good haul in that first round, and all around players that are going to contribute on day one, building in the right direction. I'd much rather be the Jets right now than the New England Patriots, who, a lot of people laughed at what they do. They can get anything, who knows? Maybe the guys they picked are going to be stars, and Bill Belichick thinks he knows more than every other talent evaluator out there. But their picks definitely raised some eyebrows at times as quote unquote reach, whatever you want to use that term for. But they took guys they were interested in at times when most thought, they weren't going to go. Strange in the first round was certainly an eye opener, the one that most people And if you're Sean McVay, literally out loud said, wow, that was a shocker, right?
Yeah.
So it's, what is New England doing? I don't know. I don't think they're helping their team now. I think they're in danger of becoming a last place team in this division, to be honest. Miami came into this draft the way the Bills did when we traded for Stephon Diggs, right? They already won. They got their guy. They're happy.
Yeah.
They're sitting at home, drinking a beer, having a cigar, and celebrating because they got Tyreek Hill, and that's, something to celebrate if you're the Miami Dolphins. Now, what they do with that is to be seen, right? We know the limitation there is Tua. So their team instantly better as well. The Jets, one of the most impressive hauls in the draft for sure, I thought. The Giants as well, with Brian Dable as their head coach and Shane as their GM. I mean, they did a phenomenal job building in the trenches, getting players. A very similar, scenario as when Beane took over the Bills. We saw, and build from the positions of need, players that, in the trenches that can contribute now, but still build into the future of when you're ready to really, really compete. And Daniel Jones, probably not the future there in my mind, but, they're certainly building the pieces around him.
Yeah. And, Kansas City, I thought, had a pretty good draft. Sky Moore in the second round.
Yeah, wow, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Cornerback McDuffie, trade up to get him, and Karlaftis.
Yeah, wow, yeah. So again, 3 guys who are very good draft for them, and they will compete with those guys. So it's a pretty good haul for them as well. Unfortunately for the Bills, they did get better. Now, still losing a guy like Tyreek Hill, in my mind, gives us the edge. The Bills the edge over Kansas City right now.
Yeah, we'll see. I think all eyes are on the quarterbacks in the division. Obviously with Miami, will Tua step up this year? Will he be able to match the expectations that just went up?
Right.
Obviously, we're all looking at Zach Wilson. The guy's got crazy, crazy talent. You just got to rein it in a little bit. We always see that jump from year 1 to 2.
Though. Right.
Yeah, a little
less expectations. He needs to improve, but he doesn't need to make the playoffs this year.
I think it's fair to say Zach Wilson's the second most talented quarterback in the division.
Absolutely. No questions asked.
I mean,
Mac Jones
if he's in New England, who knows what that looks like, but I'm a fan of Zach Wilson. I'm hoping he doesn't rein it in, but he's definitely got all the talent in the world. So watch out for him. But we've said this many, many times before, and the results are always the same, right? Somehow the Bills turned that around, but the Jets and the Dolphins haven't been able to figure it out yet. So anyway, that's all I got. Appreciate you joining us tonight. And hey, drafts in the books.
Yeah,
we're ready. Over. We're looking forward to mini camp, training camp.
Yeah, continuing to bring you the content here at Cover One. There's still going to be things to talk about, things to discuss, even though it's post-draft now. We're going to get to know these players better, get into the off-season workouts, and approach the preseason. Before you know it, it's going to be preseason. It's going to be week 1.
Right. How about the schedule release coming up the 12th?
That's right. That's a big thing as well.
Next big moment.
I think they're doing a weird thing this year where they're announcing some of the primetime games, some of the bigger games before the 12th, and then the 12th is when the entire schedule will come out. So we may have a few Bills games on the schedule where we expect that the Bills will be in some key primetime games whenever that
pretty
may
soon
be.
It'll be nationally televised, and you'll have to cover that too.
Exactly.
So year-round, it's a year-round league, folks.
Plenty of stuff to talk about.
We're going to keep bringing it. Haven't watched too much of that.
I've seen it on, but I've not been following it, if you will. But yeah, it contributes, right? There's developmental type leagues.
For sure. All right, we'll talk to you later.
Go Bills.